Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. As usual, I'm joined by my fellow panel members, Ms. Istefan and Mr. Akbor.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
And today we're going to begin by hearing further evidence from Mr. Pargeter. And so my first task is just to ensure that we are in contact with Mr. Pargeter. I think we are, but he asked him to confirm that he can hear me and see me clearly.
I can indeed.
Good morning, Mr. Pargeter. Thank you very much. That's good. I think for the form's sake, we should just go through the usual housekeeping so everyone's clear where we are. So can you confirm that you're alone in the room from which you're giving evidence?
I am alone.
Thank you. Can you confirm that you don't have any documents or other materials with you?
I do not.
And can you confirm that your mobile phone is in another room and that you don't have any other electronic device with you which is capable of receiving messages?
I don't have any devices on me at all.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And you've got full control over the lights now, haven't you?
Yes. So if it goes dark, let me know and I can switch them on then.
Very good. Thank you very much. Well, the procedure is the same as yesterday. Is there anything you'd like to ask me or raise with me before we carry on?
No, thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, in that case, I will invite Mr. Millett to put some more questions to you. Yes, Mr. Millett, when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to you and to the panel, and good morning also to Mr. Pargeter. Mr. Pargeter, I'm now going to ask you about a letter dated the 19th of January 2021, so this year, which was written by Kingspan under the hand of Ralph Mannion, the managing director, to three people, namely Clive Betts MP, the chair of the Select Committee, Brian Martin, the head of technical policy at MHCLG, and Stephen Garvin, head of building standards in Scotland. And those letters, I'll read the references into the record, are at KIN 24978, 79 and 80 respectively. My first question is, are you aware that those letters were written?
Yes, I'm aware of them.
Let's look at the letter to Clive Betts MP. That is at KIN 24978. And you can see that it bears the date 19th of January 2021. It's addressed to Clive Betts, and its title is Correction of Misunderstanding During Oral Evidence Provided to the Grenfell Tower Public Inquiry. If we go down to the bottom of the letter at page 3, if you just scroll to that, please, you can see that there is Mr. Mannion's signature as Managing Director of Kingspan Insulation UK and Ireland. Did you see this letter before it went?
I don't think I saw it before it went. I saw a copy of it afterwards.
Right. So does it follow that you didn't yourself have a hand in drafting it?
No, I should imagine based on the evidence in my witness statement as well.
You imagine what based on your evidence?
Well, it covers the same topic as my fifth witness statement.
Were you involved in the decision to send a letter such as this to Mr. Betts and indeed Mr. Martin and Mr. Garvin?
No, I was not.
Right. Were you involved in the discussions about what the letters should contain?
I don't recall being involved in the discussions.
Do you know who was involved in the decision to send such a letters?
No, I don't, other than Ralph.
Right. Do you know who was involved in the discussions about what the letters should say?
No, I don't.
When did you first discover that this letter had been sent?
I think it would have been the day it was sent. I'm sure Ralph sent a copy to me.
Right. So I take it from that you did not advise Mr. Mannion about what this letter should say?
No, I don't recall doing that at all.
And he didn't even send it to you in draft for your comment or correction, is that right?
I don't think so. I can't recall. I don't think
You can't recall?
No, I don't think he did.
You don't think he did? And this wasn't very long ago. This letter was sent 2 months ago. You can't recall whether you saw a letter, you saw a draft of this letter and was asked for your comments?
Well, I think I've done my witness statement, my fifth witness statement. So we're having general discussions about the topic, but I don't recall specifically seeing the letter.
Right. Well, let's see how far you can assist us with it. Can you please look, first at paragraph 1.1 and also 1.2. 1.1 says, we can go back to it. We anticipate that you will be closely following the evidence provided to the inquiry, and given the serious nature of the matters under discussion, we are writing to draw your attention to a material factual misunderstanding that arose during Adrian Pargeter's evidence to the inquiry on 9th December 2020, which was widely reported in the media and which pertains to evidence provided by Kingspan Insulation Limited to the Select Committee in 2018. This misunderstanding led to counsel to the inquiry suggesting to Mr. Pargeter that Kingspan engaged in a wholesale attempt to mislead you and the Select Committee and a deliberate attempt to deceive Mr. Betts and the Select Committee. This allegation was based on an assertion that Kingspan had submitted a test report on 6th July 2018 to you and the Select Committee of a system which had been designed to fail, and that Kingspan failed to inform the Select Committee of this fact. This is not accurate. We explain the misunderstanding and set out the true position in more detail below. So that's what the letter was about. Now, if we go down, please, to paragraph 2, you can see relevant background. And if you read a little further down to the next part of the screen, let's pick it up at 2.2, which starts in 2018, we were aware. And then if you go down to the next page, top of page 2, in the electronic version of this document, you can see that there are two letters, letter A and letter B. Letter A deals with the May 2018 test, and letter B deals with the July 2018 test. I'll just read those to you. A, the May 2018 test took place on 22nd May 18 at Exova, Dubai. The system incorporated limited combustibility, Alucobond A2 cladding, and Rockwool Duo slab non-combustible synthetic mineral fiber insulation. The intention was to test a system which might realistically be specified to be used on a building in the UK in accordance with the linear route to compliance, but which nevertheless contained certain design, quotes, imperfections, unquotes, which might be seen in practice and lead to a less robust fire performance than an optimally designed system. In fact, the system passed the test, i.e. the design imperfections did not adversely affect the performance of the system, such as to result in a failure to meet the BR 135 criteria. B, the July 2018 test took place on 2nd July 2018 at Exova, Dubai. The system which was tested closely replicated the Department for Communities and Local Government, DCLG, post-fire tests number 2, 4 and 6, which set the benchmark by which the UK government was determining national building safety, but incorporated Vitracor G2 cladding panels and Rockwool Duo slab non-combustible synthetic mineral fiber insulation. At the time of the July 2018 test, Vitracor G2 cladding panels were rated as of limited combustibility /A2 and available in the UK market. This system did not contain any deliberate design imperfections. Indeed, if anything, the tested construction was more robust than the DCLG tests. It was therefore, 1, a very robust construction, and 2, a system which would have been compliant under the linear route. The system failed the test, i.e. failed to satisfy the BR 135 criteria. Now, just pausing there with these statements in this letter, the statement in B that I've just read to you, that the system did not contain any deliberate design imperfections, 5 lines down within B, the system did not contain any deliberate design imperfections, conceals, doesn't it, the fact that it was constructed using a Vitracor G2 panel with a poor test record that you hoped and intended would lead to test failure?
No, it doesn't conceal that. It says there Vitracor G2. It states the performance criteria of the G2. So it's not concealing anything.
Where does it say here that Kingspan had selected the Vitracor G2 because, or despite, Kingspan's suspicions that it would lead to a failure of an 8414 test.
Well, he doesn't say that.
No. Do you accept that in omitting that fact, this was a thoroughly misleading statement?
No, it's not thoroughly misleading at all. It's quite open and transparent about the products that were tested and the results that they got.
I would suggest to you that in telling Mr. Betts that Vitracor cladding panels were rated as limited combustibility A2 and the system didn't contain any deliberate design imperfections, you are misleadingly omitting a critical fact, which was that you precisely selected Vitracor G2 cladding panels because of its poor test record in an 8414 test.
It's not misleading. It's an A2 rated product. So whether it's passed the test before or not, it was, we tested it in that system, and in that particular system, it failed.
Let's go to paragraph 3.1c. 3.1 starts, during the course of Mr. Pargeter's oral evidence on 9th December 2020, and let's look at C. I'll read the whole of it to you so I can show you the context of the part of it I want to ask you about. It was implicit in the subsequent questioning that counsel to the inquiry had understood that the April emails related to the July 2018 test when they did not. This in turn led to the line of questioning in which it was contended that Kingspan was engaged in a wholesale attempt to mislead you and the select committee. The premise of the questioning was that Kingspan should have informed the committee that the July 2018 test had contained deliberate design imperfections, or that it was designed to fail, in the words of counsel. In fact, the system tested in July 2018 had been robustly constructed and contained no such design imperfections. There was therefore nothing to draw the committee's attention in this regard. It follows that Kingspan did not in fact mislead the select committee and most certainly had no intention to do so. Again, it's right, isn't it, Mr. Pargeter, that that's not true, is it? It's not true because the July test was deliberately set up using Vitracor G2, which you knew or at least suspected would perform poorly, which it did.
It's true that the system performed poorly, but it's not withheld any deliberate design imperfections.
And it's true also that the purpose of the July test, as you confirmed yesterday, was the same as the May test, namely to have a failed test with which to support your case to Mr. Betts, among others.
That was the purpose, yes.
And you don't reveal that either, do you, in this letter? Or Mr. Mannion doesn't in this letter, does he?
Well, I would say that was clear why we've done that test. That's clear, I think, in that letter.
Oh, you say it's clear, is it, that Kingspan had set out to construct a test on both occasions that was intended to fail so as to provide evidence to support its case? You think that's clear from this letter, do you?
I think it's clear why we would be testing it, to challenge the assumptions. I think that's clear, yes.
It's true also, isn't it, at least on what I've read to you, that this letter doesn't reveal that the reason why the July test was conducted at all as Kingspan's plan B was because the May test had succeeded.
No, it doesn't say that.
Okay. And again, that's, I would suggest to you, a misleading omission, or an omission which meant that the letter was apt to mislead.
No, the letter's not misleading at all. It's laying out the facts of what we have found, and just because it doesn't mention another test doesn't mean to say it's misleading.
Now let's get back to the paragraph 2.3 on the same page. It's higher up the screen. We can just see the bottom part of it poking out. Paragraph 2.3 says, subsequently, Kingspan provided you and the Select Committee with a copy of the July 2018 test result and a compilation of supporting documents, along with 2 other third-party test results which had not been commissioned by Kingspan, but had come to Kingspan's attention as examples of systems which would meet the linear route to compliance, but which nevertheless failed to meet the BR135 criteria when tested to BS8414. The May 2018 test was not shared with the Select Committee because it was not relevant, as it did not illustrate the public safety point that Kingspan was seeking to explain. It is not in doubt that some systems comprising only A1/A2 materials will meet BR135 requirements when tested to BS8414. The point of public safety is that not all such systems will meet those requirements. Was it not, well, you claim here that, or Mr. Mannion claims here, that the May test was irrelevant because it didn't illustrate the point that Kingspan was seeking to explain. My question is, surely that it was highly relevant, that test was highly relevant for that very reason, namely that it undermined your case.
I don't think it was relevant, but obviously here I hadn't recalled that we did mention that test to them in this letter. So for the previous question, I think the previous question implied that we hadn't in this letter mentioned the May test, but obviously clearly we did.
Well, clearly you mentioned the May test in this letter. My point is that it seems from paragraph 2.3 that there had been a decision not to share the fact of or results of the May test with the Select Committee because somebody at Kingspan had decided that it wasn't relevant. Now let's just break that down. First, is it right, as this letter suggests, that there was a positive decision within Kingspan not to share or to reveal to the Select Committee the fact of or results of the May test?
Well, considered not relevant. So in considering it's not relevant, then to that case, then yes, it wasn't relevant.
Yes. That decision not to share the May test, let's look at that. When was that made? Do you know?
I don't know.
Who was privy or party to the decision not to share the May 2018 test with the Select Committee?
I don't know.
Were you?
No.
Right. Who, can you tell us, took the decision that the reason or the justification for not sharing the May 2018 test with the Select Committee was because of its perceived irrelevance?
No, I don't know who would have taken that decision.
Do you accept that the fact and results of the May test was highly relevant, by which I mean something which the Select Committee would wish to know when considering your case, because it undermined your case?
No, I don't think it was relevant.
Was it not also relevant because the success of the May test was the very reason why the July test was necessary at all?
No, I don't think so.
And I have to suggest to you that although, as you say, you had no hand in this letter was a misleading letter because it misled the Select Committee about the robustness of the July test and misled the Select Committee about the real reasons for not mentioning the May test. Do you accept that?
No, it's not. I don't think it's misleading at all.
And that in its attempt to claim that Kingspan had not set out to mislead the Select Committee, it simply made further misleading statements. Do you accept that?
No.
And do you accept that your attempts following your evidence on the 9th of December 2020 to set the record straight have simply been to create a further record of dissembling and mendacity, Mr. Pargeter?
No.
Do you accept that Kingspan's attempts to influence the government's consideration of the future of fire testing policy in this country in the wake of the Grenfell Tower fire have been entirely self-serving and at times dishonest?
No, neither self-serving nor dishonest.
Mr. Chairman, I've come to the end of my prepared questions. This may be an appropriate moment for the usual break.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Millett. Well, Mr. Pargeter, not very many questions to put to you this morning, but there we are. Mr. Millett thinks he's got to the end of them. We always, as I think you know, have a short break at this point to enable counsel to check the position and also to enable others who are following the proceedings to suggest further questions. So we will take that break now. We'll come back at 10:35, please. and see if we have any further questions for you at that stage. And of course, as before, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence while you're on the break. All right?
Yes.
See you later on. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. We'll now see whether there are any further questions for Mr. Pargeter. Just check, Mr. Pargeter, you can hear me and see me clearly, I hope?
I can, yes.
Good, thank you very much. Well, then we'll see whether there are any more questions for you. Mr. Millett, do you have any more questions for Mr. Pargeter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just one short run of questions. Can I invite Mr. Pargeter, please, to be shown the transcript for day 85, the 9th of December, 2020. And within the transcript on that day, to go to page 85. Now, if you look, Mr. Pargeter, if you look at the top of the screen, you can see that there's a question at line 3. And just to give you the context of the questions, I'm actually asking you here about the letter to the Select Committee written on the 6th of July 2018 that we saw yesterday and indeed on the 9th of December. At that stage, of course, as we know, the inquiry did not know about the existence of or the results of the May test. So I'm examining you on the April emails on the hypothesis that applied to the July test. So that's the background. But let's see the questions and answers at line 3 and following. All the weaknesses that were introduced into the system that we saw in the April email run, which were designed to make the system perform poorly, were not clearly identified as such in this document, were they? Answer, no. Question, and that therefore anybody reading it would think that the system was designed not as a worst case scenario or as a system designed to perform poorly, but just as a system. Answer, correct, as a system. And that therefore anybody reading this letter would be misled, wouldn't they, into thinking that the test had not been set up to fail, but was a fairly representative test. No, they wouldn't have been misled. It was a system designed which would comply with the linear route. So that's not misleading anybody. That's what it was. And then the chairman asks this question, but if I may say so, the key point that council is inviting you to consider is whether the system that was actually tested was designed so as to be fairly representative of what one might expect to be built. Is that your point, Mr. Millett? Answer, yes, Mr. Chairman. And then your answer is then it was designed to be the most challenging, if we can scroll down, please. Yes, it was, you say, I've lost the point. Can we scroll back up again, please? Yes, and answer at line 25. Then it was designed to be the most challenging for that, and if we turn the page, test. And then the chairman says, so I think it follows that it was not intended to be fairly representative of what one might expect to see built. Answer, I think I'd agree with that. Yes. Now, I've shown you that because that was your evidence on the 9th of December, and it's important that I remind you of that evidence before I show you a document. Having shown you that evidence, can I now show you the document at KIN 3024926, please? This is the email run from April 2018 that we looked at a very large number of times over yesterday and on the 9th of December. And if you look down, please, at the bottom of page 1 and over onto the top of page 2, you can see that the email run continues with an email on the 11th of April 2018 from Mark Harris to Nick Jenkins, copied to, among others, to you, and also to Jean Murtagh and Gilbert McCarthy. And over the top of page 2, the text from Mark Harris reads, thanks for all the effort you're putting in. Is it fair to state that the configuration and material selection reflects something that could be specified and built in the UK? And then if you read up or scroll up to the next email up on page 1, Nick Jenkins responds the same day, 11th of April 2018, to the same group of email recipients and same copyees, and says, hi, Nick. No problem, Mark, he says. I'm sorry, I've lost my own place. No problem, Mark. Yes, it's absolutely fair to state that the configuration and material selection reflects something that could be specified and built in the UK. In fact, there are many projects out there featuring very similar assemblies with both RW, phenolic and PIR rain screen insulation products. The only difference that these existing projects have panels formed from FR or PE grades of ACM rather than A2. Now, it's right, isn't it, that the answer you gave to the chairman on day 85 that I've read to you, that the system with the design imperfections in it was not intended to be fairly representative of what one might expect to see built, was correct?
No, I think what this proves is probably the opposite. I mean, I don't have the experience of all the different combinations of designs for rain screen cladding out there, whereas as Nick Jenkins does. And I think what this shows really is that it was probably far more fairly representative than I gave it credit for. And I know Nick Jenkins has subsequently written into the inquiry separately off his own volition, hasn't he, to confirm that as well. So I think it was probably more fairly representative than I gave it credit for.
Right. Are you saying that when you saw this email, you understood Nick Jenkins to be saying that the design imperfections deliberately introduced into the system to be tested, and it was tested in May, were design imperfections that would be introduced into other systems, fairly representative of those built in the UK?
I think what he was saying was that there's different types of assemblies, there's different ways of putting cladding systems together, there are different fire barriers, and there's obviously the most robust down to the weakest, and then there's quite a lot in between. So I think what he was saying was what we were constructing there would have been representative of systems, but they weren't. Those systems would not have been designed to be deliberately weak. They just would have been weaker. And I think so. He was saying of those elements, we've put them together into this test.
Yes, I mean, you're not saying, are you, that? And when you answered the chairman, you weren't saying, were you, that people would deliberately design this system with the design imperfections introduced into it that you had introduced?
I don't think anybody would deliberately design imperfections, but they would be there. They would be there by the nature of the design, if you understand what I mean. And I think that test reflected that potential.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I don't think I have any further questions arising out of that. Mr. Pargeter, subject to one matter, those are all the questions I have for you. There are outstanding document requests which have been the subject of correspondence overnight with Kingspan. And I'm going to ask you whether you would agree to assist Kingspan in assisting the inquiry in finding and producing the further documents to which you referred yesterday during your examination, which you thought might exist, so that we can see the full picture. Would you do that?
Yes, yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, subject to that, Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions, and it only remains for me to thank you very much, Mr. Pargeter, for coming back to the inquiry and answering our further questions. We're very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Millett. Well, it's right, Mr. Pargeter, that I should thank you as well on behalf of myself and the panel for coming on a second occasion to give evidence. It's been very helpful to hear from you. I'm glad to hear that you're willing to assist Kingspan in putting their hand on the documents to which you've referred and which we haven't yet seen. In the circumstances, I'm going to release you in the sense that I'm not going to ask you not to talk about your evidence to anyone else. If it becomes necessary to ask you back, then I think we'll just have to swear you again if and when that becomes necessary. But for the moment, that's all we have for you. Thank you very much again for coming to help us. And that's all we have for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, well, now we take a short break at this point while we make arrangements for the next witness. Welcome back, everyone. Our next witness is Mr. Richard Burnley, who started giving it evidence as long ago as December, but unfortunately was interrupted when we had to discontinue proceedings because of the pandemic. But he's now back with us, and the first task for me is to ensure that we are in contact and that he can see me and hear me. So good morning, Mr. Burnley. Can you see me and can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can.
Good. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming back on a second occasion. I'm sorry that your evidence has been so disrupted. We would like to have avoided that, but I don't think we had very much choice. Anyway,
I appreciate you saying that, but I realise how difficult it's been for everybody involved.
Thank you very much. Now, just to remind you, I think you made the oath on when you attended last time. So just to remind you, you're still under oath today.
Yeah.
I should just also remind you that your legal representatives are here in the virtual hearing room with us, so they're following the proceedings. They do have the ability to intervene if they think it's essential to do so, although we have other means by which they can contact our counsel if they think there's something that needs to be picked up. So I'm asking them to keep their microphones and cameras switched off to avoid any technical problems. I hope we won't have any technical problems, but if we do, we'll have a short break so that the engineers can resolve them. We'll have a short break halfway through this morning and partway through this afternoon. I think this morning we'll put it back until about 11:45, break the remainder of the morning roughly in half. Before we continue your evidence, is there anything you'd like to raise with me or questions you'd like to ask?
No, there isn't.
Right. Well, thank you very much. In that case, I'll invite Mr. Millett to put some questions to you. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Burnley, and welcome back to the inquiry. We're very grateful to you for coming back. I should just, I suppose, start again with the introduction that I always start with all witnesses, which is to thank you for coming to the inquiry and for assisting us with our investigations. Also, just to ask you please to keep your voice up so that the transcriber, who is also on the call, can get down your evidence very clearly. And don't nod or shake your head. You have to say yes or no as the case may be. If we need a break at any other time, other than the scheduled breaks that the chairman has indicated, then we can take a short break.
Mr. Millett, I'm sorry to interrupt you straight away, but I think I really should have gone through the housekeeping routine with Mr. Burnley before he starts giving his evidence. Yes. Mr. Burnley, there are a few questions which we ask all witnesses just to deal with before they start, really to ensure that you're able to give evidence without anyone being in contact. Can you confirm that you're alone in the room from which you're giving evidence?
I can, yes.
Thank you. Can you confirm that you have no documents or other materials with you?
No, I don't.
And finally, can you confirm that your mobile phone is in another room and that you don't have any other electronic device with you that is capable of receiving messages?
I can and I don't.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mr. Millett, I should have dealt with that earlier.
Now, Mr. Burnley, when your evidence was stopped on the 9th of December 2020, we were looking at an email sent to you by Tony Millichap on the 12th of November 2014. I'd like to go back to that, please. It's KIN 30 21810. You'll see that the subject title from the first email here on in the chain on the screen in front of you is K15 testing direction. And Tony Millichap had referred to a meeting earlier that day and had discussed in that email a recent test success to BS8414 Part 2 by Celotex. And if you go down, you'll see that. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the specific details of it, no, but I mean, I was aware at the time of what this was about.
Right. Now, if we look at the last main paragraph of that email, and if you want me to read the whole of it again to you, I can certainly do that because it's a long time since you saw it, I accept. Let's see how we go. If you look at the last main paragraph of the email, it says, The above approach assumes we continue to acknowledge differences between the tested products. Both blowing agent and facing thickness have significant impact. All testing has been referenced back to precise batches with control samples, as is a requirement of BRE. However, this does not include a description of the physical differences. Now, can we go next, please? I've shown you that to the transcript for day 86. And I want to show you what the exchanges were between us, leading up to the point when you stopped, we stopped. Day 86, please. I'm sorry, day 85. I'm so sorry, day 85. Day 85. And I'd like to go to page 195. Now, at line 18, you can see that I've just read to you the paragraph from this very email we've got on the screen, or just had on the screen. And then if we turn to page 196, we can see the exchange runs as follows. Now, pausing there, you realize surely by that stage, November 2014, if not at an earlier stage, that the blowing agent and facer thickness had significant impact on fire performance. Yes? Answer, sorry, could you repeat the question for me? Did you realize, I'm putting to you that you must have done by this stage, on seeing this email, if not earlier, that the blowing agent and the facer thickness had significant impact on the fire performance of the K15 as a product? Answer, I don't know what time around this, but facer thickness I can't pass comment on. I do know that my understanding was that we felt we would see an improvement from the blowing agent, and then again from hearing evidence. I do remember that we didn't see that. Question, when he refers to acknowledging the differences between the tested products, to whom was he suggesting that acknowledgement should be given? Pause, I'm not sure. I think he's just referring that we accept that there are differences, right? Question, right? And he is referring to differences, isn't he, between Solstice Blown and new technology K15? Answer, yes. And if we turn the page to 197, question, no acknowledgement was given to anybody in 2014 of those differences, was it? Answer, well, no, because we weren't selling Solstice Blown foam. This was a development project. Question, exactly, and you knew that by this time. Answer, yeah, that was my understanding, yes. And that is where we stopped. Now, I was about to ask you a question in the first sentence in that paragraph of this email when we were stopped. And I now want to ask you that question now and then continue from there. So I'm trying to make this as seamless as possible, Mr. Burnley. My question is, can we go back to the email? Perhaps that's the best thing to do. Go back to the email we were looking at a moment ago, KIN 30's21810. Looking at that last paragraph on that page, the above approach assumes. Do you agree that no acknowledgement of the differences between Solstice Blown K15 and standard new technology was given to the public?
Well, I think at this stage, the Solstice Blown foam was a development project, so I don't think it would have been, no.
Or to the BRE or the BBA or the NHBC?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And if we go to the second sentence that I read to you from that last same paragraph, all testing has been referenced back to precise batches with control samples, as is a requirement of BRE. However, this does not include a description of the physical differences. It's right, isn't it, that Kingspan knew exactly what was tested under each fire test?
I would have expected so, yes.
And you were aware, weren't you, of exactly what was tested in July 2014?
No, I wasn't. I think that was my second month with the company, so I probably wasn't even aware in June, July what a BS8414 test was.
Do you know why Kingspan didn't give a description of the physical differences to the BRE?
No, I don't.
Can I suggest that one reason was that the BRE did not discover that you were testing a research and development product?
I mean, I don't know. I can't answer. I don't know why they wouldn't have done that.
Right. And we can see at the top of this email, if we go to the very top of the screen, top of the page, which should be at the top of the screen there, you can see that Ivor Meredith forwards this email on to Adrian Pargeter, the same with the same subject heading on the Friday, November the 14th. At that stage, it's right, isn't it, that Adrian Pargeter was the head of marketing, not technical?
Correct. Yes, that's right.
You know why Adrian Pargeter would need to be aware of this discussion in his role as head of marketing?
I don't know.
Would it be, let me suggest something to you and see what you say, would it be that he would need to be kept in the loop so that he could see how far to go in attacking the tests for Celotex RS5000, given the problems that had been experienced in testing K15 as sold?
No, I don't think that would be the case. It's more likely that Ivor's informing Adrian because it's a matter of interest in terms of the technical backup to any literature that we'll be considering preparing. But at this stage, it was a development product. So I think it's more just for interest than anything else.
Now, I'd like to ask you some questions about the Routes to Compliance document published in August 2015. Can we look at KIN 6086, please? And you can see that this is the first page of that document, Routes to Compliance, Fire Safety, first issue, top right-hand corner, August 2015. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Now, Adrian Pargeter says in his second statement, and I summarize, that he signed off on this document and sent it to you and Richard Bromwich on the 24th of July, 2015 for your final sign-off. That's what he says in his second witness statement at paragraph 4.19 and 4.21. Do you agree?
Yes, no, that happened.
Did you sign off on it?
Whether I actually wrote back, I can't recall, but I mean, I would have certainly spoken to Adrian. I mean, my technical knowledge was not strong, so I would purely be looking at it from a, did it make sense? Was it readable perspective? So, and I'm sure I would have said yes, that I was happy for the document to be released.
Right, I see. Did you discuss its contents with Adrian Pargeter or anybody else before you approved it?
Well, I remember, and I've seen the email that Adrian forwarded the document to me. I don't believe from receiving that email to them releasing the document, I discussed the contents, no.
Right. Did you...
Sorry, I suspect, I mean, the email to Richard Bromwich and I mean, Richard Bromwich had been involved in the development of the document, and I think it was more of a matter of politeness that I was included on it as the MD of the business to see it, to make sure that I was happy with it.
Yes, I see. Bearing that answer in mind, did you examine and seek to verify the claims in it by looking at any underlying test evidence?
Well, no, I didn't. I mean, I was relying on what was provided in there, and I'm not sure I'm technically qualified or was then to have said whether the information I was provided was right. I was relying on other people.
So do we take it from that you trusted your team to get such matters right?
Completely.
And not to make any misleading statements in this document?
No, absolutely.
Can we go down to page 17, please? Now, this is Appendix B, and it refers to large-scale test data. And as you can see from the screen in front of you, there are three diagrams or models showing the build-up in three separate tests. Do you remember reviewing this page of this document?
I mean, I did read through the document, so yes, I would have been through the contents of the page.
It starts by saying, build-ups incorporating Kingspan Cooltherm K15 rain screen board successfully tested to BS8414 2002 and BS8414 Part 2 2005 in accordance with the performance criteria set out in BR 135. In all cases, fire stopping was provided by intumescent fire breaks positioned at floor level and around all openings in accordance with the guidance given in approved documents B2 and technical handbooks section 2. And then you can see the diagrams. If you look at the first build-up, which is the diagram on the left with report number 220876, can you see that?
Okay.
And you can see the report number at the bottom. That was the 2005 test using the cement board cladding, wasn't it?
Well, that's what it says there. I would not have known whether that was right or wrong.
When you say that whether that was right or wrong, whether what was right or wrong, whether what I've just asked you.
Yes, I mean, I can see what it says, but whether that is, I mean, I can agree that that's what it says in the picture.
I see. Now, do you accept that the K15 used in that test in May 2005 was not the K15 being sold in August 2015?
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Do you accept that the K15 product used in that test in May 2005 was not the same as the K15 being sold in August 2015?
No, I didn't know that.
Right. Do you accept that to the extent that this diagram represents or leads one to think that it was the same, that it was factually incorrect and misleading?
At the time when I read it, no, I didn't think that because I wasn't aware of the difference that you're explaining.
No, I understand that, and thank you for that. On the hypothesis that I'm correct, and that the K15 used in the test, the subject of the diagram on the left, was not the same as the K15 being sold in August 2015, would you accept that to that extent, using that diagram was incorrect and misleading?
Oh, yes. No, yes, I would. I would.
Thank you. Now, the third build-up in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see, if we go back to it, I think we need to see the whole thing, please. Just if we can pan out a bit. Yes, you can see that it's in the bottom right-hand corner, the third of the tests. Now, if we expand that again so that you can see it, it's a build-up of terracotta tile cladding and SFS, report number 291642. And you can see that the brown rain screen material is 30 millimeters non-combustible terracotta tile cladding. Did you know at the time that this was a reference to BRE classification report of the 5th of March 2015 for the test conducted in July 2014?
I don't know. I don't recall. I don't think so, no. But I can't be absolutely sure.
Right. When you say you don't think so, you don't think you knew that?
I don't think I joined those dots up at that stage, no.
Okay. Now, in fact, again, the K15 in the diagram here on the bottom right is said to be K15, but in fact, the material used in the test was a non-standard board. Did you know that?
I didn't.
I think you had agreed in December, maybe you'd forgotten, that the K15 tested in July 2014 was a trial product. Solstice Blame K15 with a 50 micron foil facer perforated only on one side, whereas the standard K15 being sold at the time had a foil facer perforated on both sides. Do you remember that?
Yes, but I think we should, I mean, we need, in terms of time frames, I wasn't aware at the time that this was referring to that test product that had been used, whereas now I obviously am aware of that.
Right, I see. Do you accept now that you know what it does refer to, that again, this technical bulletin in this respect was wrong and misleading?
Yeah, in the preparation I did for attending in December, I realised that that was misleading.
Very good, thank you very much. Do you accept that now?
Oh, I do, yes.
Yes. Now, given what Mr. Millichap had told you in the November 2014 email we've just looked at, did you not ask yourself why the July 2014 test was being cited here in this August 2015 document, when you, I would suggest you must have realized that it wasn't on standard K15 as sold?
I mean, I had no reason at the time to think that what was being shown to me was incorrect. I mean, during the course of of a month, I would see at least one of these types of documents across the whole range of products that Kingspan had sold. So I was relying on people to provide me with accurate information.
You realised, didn't you, that what had been tested in July 14 wasn't a standard K15? I think we've established that. That being the case, did you not realise when you signed off on this document that in representing the K15 as sold, this was a false and misleading document?
At the time I was asked to sign the document off, no.
Right, I see. And how can you account for not realising that you were signing off on a document that, at least in two respects, was false and misleading?
Because I was relying on the people that work for me, their teams, to provide me with accurate information, and I had no reason to doubt that what they were providing was accurate.
Now, I'd like to take you to an email that Adrian Pargeter sent you and Richard Bromwich on the 24th of July that you've referred to, I think, earlier just now this morning. It's at KIN 406676. And at the top of the screen, you'll see the email from Richard Bromwich out somewhere. And the email immediately below it is from Adrian Pargeter to you and Richard Bromwich, copied to Reshma Rudamam. And the subject is K15 Technical Bulletin. And I'll just read parts of it to you. Gents, we've now finally, I know, got the bulletin ready for final review. Although we have struggled with case studies, people refusing because of the issues, we have included 3 to kick off the document. And then you can see underneath that, he cites Brook House, Riverside Apartments, Tottenham, over 18 metres, approved and signed off by relevant parties, awaiting photography, ETA, week commencing 27th July, weather dependent, max 2 weeks. And then the second one, creating a new Pendleton residential tower block, Salford, over 18 metres. Permission requested, due back next week. Once signed off, we will need photography. ETA 2.5 weeks. And then the third, Barnsley College, South Yorkshire. Existing case study, over 18 metres, awaiting sign off for updated text from one person, ETA 1 week. Now, just pausing there, what were the issues, if you go back to the second paragraph of the email, that Mr. Pargeter was referring to there?
I think there were 2, from memory, I think there were 2 main issues. One was that we were talking to other manufacturers who had got products involved in systems that were also doing testing. So we had to get their permission to use or not use the information. And I think the second was that the customers who had bought the product weren't the owners of the buildings, and so the owners of the buildings had to sign off on us using those properties as examples.
I follow. Did you go through the bulletin at that stage?
I don't know that it was attached to this email, so I don't think I did, no. Right.
Now, can I ask you to look at your second statement to the inquiry then? KIN 30222662. And I'd like us to go together to page 19 and look at question 18 and your answer to it. Question 18 reads as follows. As far as you are aware, prior to 14th June 2017, had K15 been used in any external cladding system incorporating ACM panels with a PE core other than Grenfell Tower? If so, please identify the building or buildings on which such a system was used. If not, please explain in detail what steps you have taken as Managing Director to satisfy yourself that this is the case. Your answer is contained in paragraphs 5.8 and 5.9 below that. Let's look at that. You say, as at 14th June 2017, as far as I was aware, K15 had not been used in any external cladding system incorporating ACM panels with a PE core. I was also not aware it had been used on Grenfell Tower until after 14th of June 2017. During my time as Managing Director, Insulation UK had a project tracking database, CRM tool, to record details of specifications that Insulation UK had been directly involved in across its product range. As part of Insulation UK's investigations, shortly after the Grenfell Tower tragedy, Insulation UK searched this database for all K15 specifications and did not find any example of K15 being specified in any external cladding system incorporating ACM panels with a PE core. Do you accept, going back to the first two case studies mentioned in Mr. Pargeter's email of the 24th of July, Brook House and Pendleton Spruce, which featured in your technical bulletin, do you accept that those two case studies, in fact, did use K15 with ACM panels with a PE core?
Are we able to go back to the technical bulletin then? I maintain those statements as being correct, so you'll need to show me that that wasn't the case.
Yes, let's go to KIN 406676. Those first two are Brook House, Riverside Apartments, Tottenham, and creating a new Pendleton residential tower block, Salford.
Yep.
Now, we can go back to the bulletin itself, but the bulletin certainly says that they were, well, do you want to see that?
Yeah, if you could, because there's nothing there that tells me that they were PE cores.
Ah, okay. So you accept they were ACM though, don't you?
No, I don't. I'd like to see what the bulletin says, because I'm not able to understand that at this stage.
Yes, absolutely. We can do that. If you go back to the bulletin, you will find it at KIN 6086. And the case studies start on page 8, and we can look at pages 8 and 10. You go to page 8, first of all. There is the new Pendleton residential tower blocks, Salford. You see that?
I do.
And if you go to the third paragraph down, I'm just trying to find it on my system. It says the tired brick facades of the mid and high level apartment blocks are being replaced by modern aluminium rain screen cladding. And then there's a photograph. See that?
I see it, yes.
So it was clear to you from this bulletin that aluminium cladding, at the least, was being applied to this building.
Yeah, I can see that, but I don't link, at the time that I was reviewing this document, I wasn't linking modern aluminium rain screen cladding with ACM, and definitely not with ACM PE core.
Yes, I see. I see. And if we go to the next one, page 10, Brook House, Rivers Apartments, Tottenham, page 10, and go down to the paragraph just above the photograph, you can see that it says this: for the Rivers Apartments, Gypcraft installed 60 and 100mm Kingspan Cooltherm K15 rain screen board within a steel frame infill system. To complete the building envelope, Gypcraft then fitted an aluminium composite material facade. So for this one, it was clear from the bulletin itself, wasn't it, that ACM was being used. Except it doesn't say with a PE core, but it certainly, you would have realized reading this that ACM itself was used.
I just want to clarify, I would have read that it says an aluminium composite material facade. I would not have understood what that was at that point.
Right. So are you saying that when you read this on, or perhaps shortly after the 24th of July, you might have read aluminium composite material facade, but it wouldn't have registered with you what that was or what it signified?
Absolutely not.
I see. Do I take it that you didn't know that, as a matter of fact, in relation to the Pendleton development, the one on page 8 of this bulletin, Kingspan actually sanctioned the use of K15 with Rainobond ACM panels in a bespoke letter? Did you know that?
Not that no, I don't think I am.
Right, let me show it to you. KIN.
Not specifically. I'm aware that there were letters written, but I can't recall the exact details of all of them.
Right. Right. Well, let's let's look at that. KIN 402731. This is a letter from Kingspan, almost exactly the previous year, 14th of August 2014, to Graham Smith of Simcoe, and the heading is Pendleton Spruce Court, Coulthome K15. And if you read down the letter, you can see it's. If you go to page 2, I should just show you who it's from. It's from Dan Ball, the technical project leader, as you can see there. And if we go back to page 1, you can see that he says in the first paragraph there, in the third line, second part of the sentence, we can confirm from checking through the build-up listed in the query form attached separately, Kingspan Insulation Limited are happy that the build-up you propose is suitable to include K15. And the same point is made in the next paragraph. The query form is what we need to look at. That's, which is attached to this letter, that's at KIN 402729. Just dig into that. (2729). And if you go to page 3 in that email run, there is the query form. And if you have it expanded, you'll see that in the third item down, after project name and full project address within the form, you'll see there's a line for cladding outer face type. And you'll see there, it says Reno bond, 4 millimeters thick. Now, I'm not suggesting that you saw this document at the time, unless you tell me you did, Mr. Burnley. But looking at that, do you accept on the face of it that Kingspan itself was sanctioning the use of K15 with Reno-Bond 4 millimeter?
I mean, I can't recall seeing either the letter or this document before, and I can only tell you what I believed to have been the case. I mean, whether it probably wasn't when this was issued, and it's probably certainly wasn't when the routes to compliance bulletin was issued. But my knowledge remains that I don't think that we had sanctioned K15 with a pure PE core ACM. I think it was used with a mineral content ACM, which did have a fire rating. But that's the limit of my technical knowledge.
Right. Well, let's just pursue this a little bit more. You can see that in August 2014, Dan Ball of Kingspan is sanctioning the use of K15 on Pendleton spruce with Reno-Bond 4 millimeters thick. Let's look at another document, MET 3040563. Now, this is email correspondence between Genius Facades, who is associated with Mr. Simmons, and Arconic in May 2015. So after the date after the August 14 letter, but before the sign off. And again, I'm not suggesting that you would have seen this for one moment, but it's a document that comes from Arconic and Genius Facades. And if you go to page 2, you'll see an email from Liam Harper to Graham Byrne at Genius Facades. And the subject is Reno-Bond PE, switch from transparent core to black core. Peter, the only project we have ongoing would be Pendleton. With this in mind, any material for the following blocks will need to be transparent core as previous. And then you can see Spruce Court. So that's Pendleton Spruce. There are a number of other Pendleton buildings named after trees, I think, certainly hornbeam and whitebeam. And I'm not asking you to comment. If this document shows, on the hypothesis that it shows that what was being used as the Rainobond panels, as the rain screen at Pendleton Spruce was Rainobond 4mm with a PE core, regardless of whether it was transparent or not, then that would show, would it not, that Kingspan had in fact sanctioned the use of K15 with an ACM panel with a PE core for Pendleton Spruce, one of the case studies used in the August 2015 route to compliance document you sanctioned.
That was a very long question, but I think I get the gist of it. I mean, I would have to disagree. I think as a consequence of the process that we're going through now, I would have to see what the exact specification is of the Rainobond PE transparent core and black core is to pass comment. And I'm not sure, even if I saw it, that I'd necessarily know without asking somebody. But I wouldn't want to assume anything.
All right. You said in your statement that I read to you that as part of Insulation UK's investigation shortly after the Grenfell Tower fire, Insulation UK searched your CRM database for all K15 specifications and didn't find any example of K15 being specified in any external cladding systems incorporating ACM panels with a PE core. That was your evidence.
It was.
Did it not pick up Pendleton Spruce?
My understanding is that Pendleton Spruce, as I understand it, wasn't a pure PE core. It was one with some sort of mineral core as well.
Well, you say my understanding is that. Was that an understanding that you had at the time you signed your second statement and answered question 18 from the inquiry?
Yes.
So did you have a conversation with anybody within Kingspan about precisely what the nature of the core used within the Rainobond 4mm ACM panels was at Pendleton Spruce?
When I provided my statement?
You did you?
No, I didn't. I wasn't working at Kingspan when I provided the second statement.
No. So my question again, maybe we're at cross purposes. Can you explain why it was that when Insulation did its search of its database and failed to find any example of Kingspan K15 being specified in an external cladding system incorporating ACM panels with a PE core, as you say in your statement, that search did not turn up Pendleton Spruce?
I can't explain it. What I put in the statement was exactly my understanding.
Did anybody tell you? Well, it was your understanding. What was the source of your understanding about the search of the database?
I think, well, I remember that Adrian, Pargeter and I had a conversation. I mean, we talked about, look, how do we try and find out where K15 is being used? And the obvious place was in our CRM system. And so, it was agreed that we would do a search. And so my understanding would have come from whatever I was told that search brought up.
You didn't do that search yourself, I take it?
Absolutely not, no.
Who did it?
I don't know. Somebody within Adrian Pargeter's team.
Right. You see, when you say in your statement, Insulation searched the database for all K15 specifications and did not find any example, what is the source of your evidence that it did not find any example? Is that something somebody told you, or something you know for yourself?
It's something somebody would have told me.
Who was that?
I don't recall.
Right. Did you actually see a document presenting the results of this search, or was this something?
No, I didn't. It was something I would have been told verbally.
Right, I see. And you don't know who that was?
I can't recall, no.
Right. You see, in your statement, you don't say, I was told that no example was found. You're swearing to the fact that none was found, but you can't now tell us how precisely that investigation was conducted.
I can't, no. But I stand by that statement when I made that statement.
Well, when you say you stand by the statement when you made the statement, are you telling us merely that you had no reason to think that it was wrong?
Correct.
But now I've shown you with some evidence that in fact it was wrong, and that there was a case where Kingspan had sanctioned use of K15 with an ACM panel with a PE core, mainly Pendleton Spruce, that in fact the search that was conducted had missed that.
Well, I'm very sorry if I've missed something that you've explained to me. I still am not absolutely clear that we're talking about the same PE core, pure PE core. I need to understand the exact nature of the panels that we're referring to in those three examples in the route to compliance.
Well, what did you understand in your witness statement when you referred to ACM panels with a PE core? What did you think that was about?
I thought it was referring to the type of panel that was used at Grenfell Tower.
And what is it about the Pendleton spruce panels, the subject of the emails I've just been showing you, that makes all the difference and tells you that that isn't an ACM panel with a PE core as you identified in your statement?
Well, I think what I'm generally showing in a very awkward way is my lack of technical understanding.
But are you in any doubt on what I've shown you? That in fact what was specified for Pendleton spruce was in fact ACM with a PE core? You're not challenging that, are you?
I can only see what you've shown me this morning, so I'm not challenging it. I'm saying I don't fully understand it, and I'd like to see the specifications.
Well, let me
Even then, I'm not sure, but yes, I can take. I mean, if you want me to agree with you, I can agree with you.
Well, I don't want you to agree with me for the sake of it. I just want you to agree with me where it's right to. Let me just show you one more document and then we'll move on. This is Debbie French's Metropolitan Police witness statement, MET 3053162. And this is a long statement, and I may just have to come back to the reference in due course. But take it from me that she, well, I think we'll just come back to that in due course if we need to. But she makes it clear that it was a PE core used at Pendleton spruce. You would have no reason to disagree with that.
If that's what the lady said, then I would have no reason to disagree with it.
And I'll come back to that and put that right after the break. It's a 34-page statement. Do you agree that in general, on what we've seen this morning, that this routes to compliance document of August 2018 was dangerous in its general descriptions of the cladding systems built up for Pendleton spruce because it masks the fact that ACM with a PE core was being used as the cladding with K15 as the insulation product when you didn't know that?
I would agree that it's misleading, yes.
Yes. Do you accept that you had the means to know that? To know that Pendleton spruce, although a case study, was K15 together with an ACM with a PE core?
Me personally?
Yes.
No, I don't.
Now, if we go, actually, I think I can take you to this reference because I've just been assisted with it very helpfully. But if we go back to the statement from Deborah French, MET 3053162, and go please to page 31, paragraph 96. We can see that she's covering a topic there, Genius Facades and Simcoe. And if you go down about just about halfway down the screen, about a third of the way through the paragraph, she's talking about Reino Bond and Genius being a customer of Reino Bond, customer of Arconic in the UK. And she says, one of those projects was called Pendleton, which was a large project in Manchester or Salford involving 3 buildings. It was an unusual design, which I think incorporated both rivet and cassette systems. The product supplied was Reino Bond PE. I gave a presentation to Simcoe on this project in around May 2011, which included reference to both the BBA certificate and to the product having both UK and European fire certificates. Now, on the basis of that she's correct about that, would you accept that the cladding used at Pendleton, including Pendleton spruce, was Rayno bond 4mm PE cord ACM?
I would agree that that is the product that was supplied. The piece that I'm missing is I'm not agreeing with the fact that that is necessarily what Kingspan signed off on. That's what I can't consolidate in my mind. I can see that it was supplied. I still haven't seen anything that I need to go back and see what Kingspan have said that they're signing off as the system.
Well, I showed you the letter sent by Dan Ball on the 14th of August 2014 as what it was that Kingspan was sanctioning and signing off on, which attached the query form, which identified 4mm Rayno bond. Well, I put all the pieces together for you. I'm not sure I can do much more. Do you accept, as a fact, that at Pendleton Spruce, K15 was used with ACM, the PE core, supplied by our colleague, under the Rayno bond brand, as we've seen, and that was something signed off on by Dan Ball of Kingspan in August 2014?
I can't agree with that, no. I can agree that the Rayno bond PE appears to have been supplied and that K15 was also installed.
It's true, isn't it, as a fact, that as at the date of the Grenfell Tower fire, K15 had never, in fact, as sold, passed even a full system test under BS 8414 with any type of ACM as the panel?
No, I can agree. I don't think we'd ever tested it with an ACM.
Mr. Chairman, is this a convenient moment for a break?
Yes, I think it is. Well, Mr. Burnley, I said we'd have a break partway through the morning. I think we'll take it now, roughly halfway through the morning's evidence. We'll come back, please, at 12:05. And as with everybody else, I have to ask you not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it over the break. All right?
Yeah, I understand.
Thanks very much. We'll see you a bit later on.
Yep.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue hearing from Mr. Burnley. So I'll just check that Mr. Burnley can see me and hear me clearly. Mr. Burnley, I hope you can.
I can, yes.
Thank you very much. And I take it you're ready to carry on.
I am.
Thank you very much. Then, Mr. Millett, when you're ready.
Yes. Mr. Burnley, by 2016, it's right, isn't it, that Adrian Pargeter had become the head of technical and marketing, and he took that role in.
That's correct.
And that, yes. Now, I want to ask you about a BS8414 test, a full system test that Adrian Pargeter and members of the technical team were undertaking in respect of the low lambda solstice blown version of phenolic foam, which was called K115. Do you remember that?
I remember the product, yes.
Right. Do you remember how, if at all, K115 differed from the solstice blown K15 tested in 2014?
I don't know how it differed. I would have assumed it was similar, I guess.
Right. And do you know how it differed to the 100% solstice blown product that Kingspan had wanted to produce but were unable to produce?
No.
Let's go to KIN 407492, please. KIN 407492. This is an email to you, among others. If you look down a third of the way down the screen, from Adrian Pargeter, dated the 9th of December 2016. And the title of it is K1158414 test. And he says, guys, following the latest 8414 part 1 for K115, we observed sustained flaming at the top of the rig, so knew it would be a fail. We have now received the TC data, and it's not looking good. The insulation layer saw temperatures of 900 degrees. I have attached the data from the test and the report from the previous test for comparison. And he then goes on, if you can see below that, to draw some comparisons between the test in 2005 and the test in 2016. And at the bullet points, he says, level 1, initial thoughts. So level 1 external thermocouple seems fairly consistent, although one thermocouple spiked over 1000 degrees in the 2016 test. Level 2 external thermocouple didn't exceed 500 degrees for the whole duration in the 2005 test. In the 2016 test, 4 of the thermocouples exceeded this, with one rising as high as 870 degrees. Level 2 cavity thermocouple didn't exceed 400 degrees in the 2005 test. In the 2016 test, nearly all the thermocouples exceeded this, with some rising as high as 1000 degrees. Level 2 insulation thermocouple didn't exceed 400 degrees in 2005 test. In 2016 test, nearly all the thermocouples exceeded this, with some rising as high as 900 degrees. We may have scraped the 15-minute criteria for BR135. All level 2 thermocouples seem to hit 600 degrees around 900 seconds. The only known difference from first part 1, is obviously the insulation and the fire barriers. Original had stainless steel 1.5 to 2 millimeter thick vented barriers, which were removed from the market as they did not comply with today's performance requirements. So we effectively replaced them with better performing ones from Siderise, MF bats with intumescent strip. From the observations, the K115 seemed to continue to burn for longer after the crib was extinguished compared to previous tests, and completely disintegrated all the way to the top of the main wall. The wing wall had to be extinguished. There were several very loud pops, stroke bangs, stroke pocking noises during the test not heard before. If you could go to the page, the cladding and insulation came away from the wall all the way to the top on the front face, unlike the first test. The cladding came away from the wall all the way to the top on the front face, unlike the first test, presumably because of the increased temperature. And then he says this, I have a concern that we just do not know really, do not really know what product was tested in the first test 10 years ago. So I would like to compare the performance of K115 against K15 as it is today in a known test. One option is to replicate the above Part 1 test with K15, which will give best direct comparison. But that leaves us hoping it is worse than K115, and we will then have 2 failed tests in which to convince the BRE to assess K115 based on "it's not as bad?" ? I've read a lot of that to you, Mr. Burnley. Do you accept, as a very general point, that at this point, so this is December in 2016, Mr. Pargeter was keeping you, among others, up to date and in some detail with the progress of testing K115 and K15 and the issues that were facing the technical team in respect of those tests?
Well, if you look at if you go back to the previous page, I mean, I'm actually copied on the email, so he's updating a number of people and he's sending it to me for information.
Yes. Well, did you read this email when you received it, do you think?
It would have been likely that I would have scan read it, yes.
Right. Even from the scan read, would it not have been, or was it not clear to you that what was tested in 2005 was not being sold in 2016?
It was, but I hadn't realised that we were relying on the 2005 test to sell the product today, or at that date. I thought it was just referring to a test that they had done. They were comparing test results.
What test did you think Kingspan were relying on to sell the product as it was in late 2016?
A valid one.
Well, yes. Which one? When? Date?
Yeah, I can't answer that.
No.
I don't know.
So from that answer just now, do we take it that you actually simply assumed that Kingspan was selling K15 into the market in late 2016 on the basis of a valid test, but didn't know which it was or when it had been undertaken?
Yeah, I had no reason to doubt anything that I was being told. It was other people's responsibility, and I assumed that it was correct.
Let's see how we go with the next few questions. Was the plan here to subject a standard K15 to the same Part 1 test that K115 had been subjected to and performed so badly in the hope that K15 would perform worse, and then could be able to persuade the BRE that K115 was better in some way?
I know you're referring to something that was said in that email. I don't know that. You probably have to ask Mr. Pargeter that.
Do you know what the possible justification was for hoping that K15 would perform worse than this very poor test performance for K115?
No, I don't. I mean, my understanding from the 115 testing was this was a new development product that we were wanting to bring to market, in which we knew we would have to have an 8414 pass. So I was linking this work to trying to bring that product to market and nothing else.
Since the K15 being sold in 2016 wasn't the same as the K15 tested in May 2005, are you able to explain how any extrapolation from the 2005 test could be used to draw any conclusions about a different product, whether it was K115 or the K15 being sold in 2016?
Absolutely not. I think you can see from my limited technical knowledge, I wouldn't even attempt to do that.
Now, if we go to the top of the email chain, you'll see that you send this email on. Go back to the email chain, please.
I saw it. I forwarded it to Peter Wilson.
Indeed. The next day, 10th of December. And you say, "Hi, Peter, quite some detail attached. There is a call with the BRE next week to discuss the results. After that, we will arrange to call to discuss the next steps." Am I right in thinking that that would indicate that you had read this email, if not word by word and digested it word by word, then taken it in sufficiently to understand what it was talking about?
Well, I think I'm saying to Peter, there's a lot of detail there. I'm not saying whether I understand it or not, but I'm forwarding it to Peter because A, I thought he'd be interested, and B, I probably thought he'd understand it more than I did.
Why is that? Why would he understand it more than you?
Well, because he'd been around. I mean, he'd done the job before me as MD of the UK, and he'd certainly been around since the product was originally developed.
What was your role in general in the fire testing of K115 at this time?
My role in the fire testing, I had no role in the fire testing.
I see. Was there a call with the BRE the following week? Do you remember?
There may well have been. I wouldn't have been involved in that call. I think I'm referring to, I mean, it's quite likely that I've spoken, I mean, I guess I'm guessing, I'm assuming I've spoken to Adrian. He's told me about the email he sent me. He said that they've arranged a call with the BRE. So I'm updating Peter saying, here's an email, there's some information in it. I believe there's a call with the BRE. After that, the broader group will arrange a call to discuss the next steps. That looks to me what I've said.
Yes, I see. And was there a call in which you discussed the next steps?
I don't remember one. There may have been one that I wasn't involved in, but I don't recall that actually.
Do you remember what Peter Wilson did in response to this email?
No.
Did you have a discussion with Peter Wilson about the contents of this email?
Not specifically, no.
Did Peter, to your knowledge, did Peter Wilson know that Kingspan was attempting to extrapolate data from a test that was undertaken with a different product from the product being sold on the market at the time?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Peter was my boss, so it was within his rights to ring any of my team or any of their teams to ask his own questions. So I don't know whether he did that or not.
Do you know what the result, the ultimate result of all the testing of K115 was?
From the perspective I mentioned before, we were trying to bring this product to market, and I think my understanding was we said, well, we can't take K115 to market yet. It's not ready.
Was it ever released to the market? Do you know?
115, not while I was there, no.
To your knowledge, was the K15, which was being sold to the market, changed significantly whilst you were employed or during your time at Kingspan?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I'd like to ask you one or two questions about Class 0. Did you know that both before and during your time at Kingspan claimed that K15 had achieved Class 0?
I was told that it had achieved Class 0, yes.
Who told you that?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it could have been one of a number of people. Those people would have been Tony Millichap, John Garbett, Adrian Pargeter.
In what context do you remember being told that K15 had achieved Class 0?
I don't remember.
What did Class 0 mean to you at the time you were told that K15 had achieved it?
It didn't mean anything. It was probably part of a series of information I was given. So it was clearly being used as part of the specification for K15.
Did you yourself ever, either at the time you joined or later, undertake any investigations of whether the claim that K15 had achieved Class 0 was underpinned by any test data?
I don't know. That wasn't my responsibility, so I had no reason to.
Were you ever made aware of any continuing problems in relation to K15 achieving Class 0?
I don't know whether I'm getting confused. I think subsequent to, I can't remember the exact time, but I've seen emails, I think, where Adrian maybe tells me that there's a problem. I can't recall exactly.
Were you made aware at any stage of the fact that fire retardants were being added to K15 in order to help it achieve Class 0?
No, not that I recall.
Were you made aware of Kingspan relying on test reports for Class 0, which were in fact undertaken on research and development products?
No, I don't believe so.
Were you aware of the practice of Kingspan testing the foil facer only, the foil facer of the product only, and then claiming Class 0 for the entire product?
I think back when I was the managing director, not, but I think either through hearing or reading evidence, I've read that they were testing it separately.
Right. Were you ever aware, did you ever hear when you were at Kingspan, a view expressed that in England, for a composite product, you only had to test the foil facer itself under the relevant British standards in G class 0?
I don't believe so.
I'd like to show you an email chain that you were not copied in on, but you may be able to help us with. KIN 404168. It's a long email chain involving members of the technical team and Adrian Pargeter as well, from the 27th of June 2016. That's at the top of the screen, the date on which the chain ends. And the subject matter, and I will summarize it, is that K15 can't achieve class 0. In some cases, the core has achieved class 2, but the participants in this email discussion appear to agree that as the foil facer can achieve class 0, then class 0 will be claimed for the entire product. And I've summarized the gist of the discussion, I hope accurately. If you go to the second email down, you can see that there's an email from Aaron Chalmers, dated the 27th of June 2016, to Dan Ball, Adrian Pargeter, Adrian Brazier, and others, including Reshma Ruderman. And he says, yeah, does seem a bit of a cheat, though, doesn't it? Claiming class 0 for just a facer test when you said it's meant to be a product as placed on the market. But like everything in ADB, it depends on who is interpreting the wording, like the whole K15 issue and whether filler material includes the cladding. If a fire engineer believes the core will affect the facing performance, though, should we be claiming class 0 based off facer performance alone if 14mm K15 then fails to get class 0? And above this, we can see that Reshma Ruderman responds to Aaron Chalmers and says, perhaps it would be better if you had a meeting to discuss this matter verbally. You're not copied in on this email chain, but did you see it at the time? Did somebody send it on to you, do you think?
I don't recall seeing it. So no, I don't think so.
No. Did you ever get involved in a discussion, an oral discussion with Mr. Pargeter or Mr. Ball or indeed Mr. Chalmers about claiming class 0 for the facer?
I don't think so, no.
Did Adrian Pargeter ever raise with you this bit of a cheat practice or the approach being proposed by Kingspan to claiming class 0 for the whole product, K15, based only on a test on the facer?
I don't recall it.
Could we go, please, to KIN 407445? This is an instant messenger chat between two of your technical team, Peter Moss and Aaron Chalmers, on the 9th of November 2016. And we saw it in a bit more detail when we were asking Mr. Pargeter about this in December. I'm not going to read it all out to you again. I just want to show you a part of it. If we go to line 24, so it's about, looking at your screen, it's about halfway down. You can see that Pete Moss at 1633 says, if we can have it expanded, thank you, at 1633, so Aaron Chalmers says at 1633, doesn't actually get class 0 when we test the whole product though, lol. Pete Moss, what? We lied? Question mark. Honest opinion now, DW. Aaron Chalmers, yeah. Tested K15 as a whole, got class 1. Way, lol. Pete Moss, way. Shit product, scrap it. Aaron Chalmers, but England Wales is worded in such a way that it, quotes, implies that facing can give you class 0. Scotland is written better, therefore our product is not class 0 in Scotland. Ha ha, but don't tell anyone that. Now, just pausing there, that is what your own technical team thought of the bit of a cheat. Did you know any of this yourself?
No, I didn't.
And if we go to the top of page 2 of this communication, it starts off, way, look who knows their shit, Aaron Chalmers. Yeah, all lies, mate. Peter Moss, just tickling your balls, mate. Aaron Chalmers. So it's class 1 on K7, K12, 8. Dan Glock, class 2. I'm retesting to Hope. Fire performance, Kingspan, cool therm, K7 pitch roof board is class 1. Aaron Chalmers balls. All we do is lie in here. Peter Moss, I. And then it goes on to something more personal. Now, again, my question is, and obviously these messages were never intended to see the light of day, but when Mr. Chalmers says, all we do is lie in here, do you agree that that was an eloquent summary of Kingspan's culture at the time?
I mean, first of all, I would say it's a very disappointing exchange. But no, I do not agree that all we do is lie. Absolutely not.
Now, you had been managing director for some 2.5 years by this point. So this is happening on your watch. How can you account for allowing what is going on and being described by these messages to occur?
Well, first of all, I wasn't aware of those messages. And as I've said, it's a very disappointing exchange.
Do you accept that a culture of lying about fire safety of products is particularly serious because you're taking risks with people's lives and the safety of their homes?
I do agree that a culture of lying is dangerous, but I don't agree that that was what was evident at Kingspan.
So are you saying that, notwithstanding the tone and content of this exchange, robust and rustic though it may have been, you were completely unaware that this kind of thing was going on within your technical team?
Absolutely.
And what is your reaction to seeing this document?
It's, as I said, it's incredibly disappointing, and having seen it, I would want to do something about it.
Yes. So you reject, do you, my suggestion that there was a culture of lying and dishonesty within Kingspan, even during your time?
I do.
Are you telling the inquiry that the culture at Kingspan?
Absolutely.
Right. Now, immediately after you joined Kingspan in 2014, you were made aware of certain difficulties about K15 that had grown up as between the NHBC on the one hand and Kingspan on the other. That's right, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it is late. I think it was late in 2014 I started to be made aware.
Yes. Let's see. KIN 30010729. This is an email to you. KIN 30010729. Yes, here it comes. It's from Richard Bromwich on the 20th of June 2014. And he says to you, FYI as discussed. And then beneath that, there's an email from Steve Evans at NHBC to Richard Bromwich, copied to others, about Kingspan K15 with high importance. And June 2014, 20th of June 2014, you, I think, had only just joined, hadn't you?
That's correct.
Yes. And if you look at the email, which is being sent on to you by Richard Bromwich, the Steve Evans 16th of June email, he says, Dear Richard, it's Richard Bromwich, further to the recent discussions between Kingspan and NHBC, I'd be grateful if you could provide me with an update on the use of Kingspan K15 on buildings with a height exceeding 18 meters as a matter of urgency. The latest version of the BBA certificate extracted below makes it clear that only a construction similar to that tested can be considered as meeting the requirements of BS 8414 Part 1. K15 backed directly onto a masonry wall. It is noted that the additional wording of the earlier BBA certificate, whereby advice on alternative constructions could be sought from Kingspan, has now been removed. NHBC has not been provided with anything further that is based on BS 8414 Part 1 to prove performance from an accredited independent testing in accordance with BR 135 recommendations. As such, as a building control body, NHBC Building Control Services is in a difficult situation. Whilst we do not wish to prejudice the construction of a large number of tall buildings in which with K15 is being used as an incident, we do not have any suitable basis under Regulation 7 for the acceptance of the external envelope design, where it moves away from the construction used to compile the BBA certificate. And then he says in bold and in red, therefore I must advise you that unless additional tests evidence supporting the use of K15 in constructions which differ from the BS 8414 Part 1 test can be provided before 30th of June 2014, NHBC Building Control Services will need to reconsider its acceptance of K15 in buildings over 18 metres as fit for purpose. Now, having read all of that to you to prompt your recollection, did you have any discussion with Mr. Bromwich about the subject of this email?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking that the reason he forwarded this email is probably because this was discussed between myself and Tony Millichap, because that's what would suggest from the way he forwards it.
Indeed. Do you remember the contents of that discussion?
No, I don't. I mean, I think I was just over 2 weeks into the company, so this was probably one of a number of matters around the business that I was being made aware of.
Can we take it that by this very early stage, as you say, a couple of weeks into your career at Kingspan, you were well aware that K15 was being used above 18 metres in external wall construction systems which differed from the system that had been tested under the BS 8414 test referred to?
No, I hadn't understood that, no.
You hadn't understood that from the email that had been forwarded to you?
I can't say that I did, no. I mean, I can see that it says it there, but the absolute relevance and importance, it probably hadn't, the penny hadn't dropped.
When you got this email from Richard Bromwich, what did you do?
I mean, I don't recall. I would imagine I would have asked him and Tony, so are you dealing with it? Do you need any help or support from me? And I would think they would have politely told me that they didn't, given that I'd been there 2 weeks and, probably couldn't have been much help.
Did it strike you at the time that what the NHBC was saying was a matter of extreme importance to Kingspan and indeed to the wider public?
Well, I could see that it was very important to NHBC because of the way that the email was written. Yes.
Did it concern you that the additional test evidence that they were seeking was lacking?
It became a concern, and that's part of the reason I sort of insisted in being involved and going to meet the NHBC later in the year. I'm not entirely sure at that stage of that June that it was as clear as it probably became.
Did you know from this email that, even if you didn't know much else, that all that a pass under a test conducted in accordance with BS 8414 Part 1 would allow you to do is to use the insulation product only in exactly the same wall build-up as that which had been tested?
I mean, it sounds very logical to say that. I don't know whether I'm having to remember, and I can't remember, but I mean, my engineering background, you would expect that to be likely, yes.
Yes, and therefore you would have realised, is this right, that any divergence from the system as tested would not be covered by the test and would not comply with the building regulations?
I wouldn't have been able to join that up to the building regulations, no.
All right, but leaving aside the building regulations, any test configuration or design or ingredients, components that differed from the system as tested would not be covered by the test.
No, that sounds very logical.
Yes. When you saw this email, would I be right in thinking that you saw this as bad news from Kingspan's point of view, because you only had test results from 2005?
No, I didn't. I think the way I probably would have interpreted it is it was something that was clearly very important, and being very new to the company, I was questioning whether it was something that I needed to get involved with immediately.
Right. And you told us before, I think, that you spoke to Tony Millichap about it and possibly Richard Bromwich. How did you take this concern forward, the concern that the NHB had expressed in this email?
Again, I can't recall exactly, but it would seem logical in the way that I think I work. I would have asked them if they needed any specific help or if they felt that they were going to be able to. I mean, it was in their area of responsibility. So I would have said, do you need any help from me, or are you okay to go on and try and resolve this issue?
But Richard Bromwich had escalated it, so to speak, to you in his 20th of June email, hadn't he?
You referring to that's the one that you showed me?
Yes, the one FYI as discussed, when he attaches Steve Evans's email to Richard Bromwich. Richard Bromwich sends it on to you. So he was putting this, wasn't he, in your sphere of responsibility?
Yeah, I think you would refer to that as escalation. That's confirming a conversation that we've had and probably providing more background information.
All right, well, forget escalation. Do you accept that Richard Bromwich was placing this, the topic, to use a neutral word, the subject of the email, in your sphere of responsibility?
He's placing it in my sphere of knowledge. There's no request for action in the email. And since the work and what had been the interactions between the NHBC at that point were being handled by Richard Bromwich and his team and Tony Millichap and his team, then it was being brought to my attention.
Did you take any steps after 20th of June 2014 to monitor or supervise what Tony Millichap and Richard Bromwich were doing about the additional test data requested by the NHBC?
Well, I'm pretty sure that I would have continued to ask them if they were making progress in resolving the problems and issues that existed.
Do you have any specific recollection of doing so?
Well, I would imagine, I'm trying to remember, because in the preparation before Christmas, I did look at some notes of meetings and things. So I would have thought it would have been on meetings and it was being discussed, or just for updates on what progress we were making.
What would the commercial consequences have been for Kingspan had the NHBC reconsidered their acceptance of K15?
Well, in terms of commercial consequences, I don't think we would have ever done a calculation to see what the commercial consequences were. I mean, it would have meant that K15's use in that application was being severely questioned.
And what would the commercial consequences, even in outline, have been for Kingspan had that happened?
Well, it's very likely that people would have stopped using the product.
And the commercial consequences of that?
I'm not sure. I mean, we wouldn't have sold the product.
Quite. That would have had.
This was one of 30 or 40 products, so it wasn't going to. The company wouldn't have shut down. It would have been. It was, it would have been a problem, but it would have worked to solve the problem.
Can we go to KIN 408841, please? KIN 408841. Now, this is an email from Ivor Meredith to you, among others, as well as Tony Millichap and Gwyn Davis and Malcolm Rochfort. And it's dated the 21st of August 2014. And the subject is comment required by Monday, 5 p.m, please. K15 update. There's an attachment. which is BCA GN 18. Guidance Note 18. And he says, as the key stakeholders for the current Cooltherm K15 fire certification issues, I have taken 5 to update you all on the current situation since our last meeting a month ago. That month ago would have been something around the 20th, 21st of July. Just pausing there, do you recall being at a meeting with Ivor Meredith to discuss K15 and the NHBC in mid-July?
I don't recall it, no.
And he goes on, I have limited the circulation of this email as there are a couple of questions in red I would like feedback / agreement on. Once these issues are clarified, I will send a wider update. 1, NHBC, BCA. A meeting has been held with the NHBC, whom are still pushing for someone to provide job-specific test data. They are still sanctioning the use of K15, as long as they get a bespoke letter off KIL, which technical products are turning around in 48 hours, on receipt of the drawings and confirmation of the fire barrier dimensions. They have also given us an extra 3 months to get some further assessments on the test data to meet their needs. And we've also requested 2 weeks notification if they decide to change their stance. Steve Evans was also involved in the BCA publication attached, which has been driven by them following the confusion in interpretation of our high-rise regulations. I've highlighted some parts of this document as it clearly singles out polyurethane as not being suitable, but doesn't mention PF. We should consider whether this would be a document we would ever consider referencing for commercial reasons. Now, just pausing there, were you, as managing director, concerned that Kingspan was sending out bespoke letters on a 48-hour turnaround, confirming the use of K15?
No, I wouldn't say I was concerned. I was aware that it was being done, and the people in the technical teams were comfortable with what they were doing.
Did you ask yourself or them how it was that the technical team could sanction the use of K15 in build-ups which were different from the build-up that had been tested?
No, I didn't know.
Why is that?
I don't know. I didn't. It wasn't something that came to my mind to ask them. Again, I mean, this was, I was working with people who I had no reason to doubt their integrity, and I was relying on their technical knowledge.
Were you aware that the NHBC had been asking for further test data from 2013?
Well, I think this is August 2014. This is probably when I was starting to hear that this had been going on for some time. And as I subsequently found out, I mean, the work that the NHBC were putting into this was good, because they were trying to add clarity to some very difficult to interpret parts of the building regulations.
Do you remember that the NHBC finally got, I would say, exasperated is the word I might choose, but you might use a different word, with the lack of evidence from Kingspan about the use of K15 over 18 metres?
No, I think exasperated is exactly the word. And I probably shared it because I was, as I was getting more involved between around July, August, and I think when I first went to meet them, you could sense their frustration. And that's why I was very keen, because I was, clearly we weren't doing something that they wanted, and I wanted to hear it for myself, and A, let them know that I was taking it seriously, and then B, make sure that we got it sorted out for them.
Yes. Now let's go to NHB 50922, please. This is a letter from the NHBC addressed to Tony Millichap on the 5th of February 2015. And he says, I refer to the progress of discussions concerning this product, which have been ongoing since December 2013, which I've recently discussed with our standards and Technical Manager Graham Perrior, and Sales Area Technical Manager Steve Evans. And he's the same Steve Evans as we saw sending the email of the 16th of June the year before. Now, I'll read it to you. It's quite a longish document, but I'll just read you the key parts of it. I should just say before I do that, is this a letter that you saw at the time, do you think? So February 2015?
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall seeing it, but I'm pretty sure I would have seen it.
In the second paragraph, he says, Kingspan Market K15 range screen board with the claim that it, quotes, has been successfully tested to BS 8414-2002 and can meet the criteria within BR 135, which makes it acceptable for use above 18 meters. This wording appears on the front page of the K15 product literature dated March 2011, which is on your website. Being aware that the current BBA certificate for the K15 product dated December 2013 does not provide the necessary evidence to fully support this claim, we've been requesting evidence from Kingspan since early 2014. We're disappointed that despite commitments from Kingspan to engage fire engineer expertise or carry out substantial additional testing to demonstrate that alternative typical wall build-ups are acceptable to BR 135, to date, none of this has come to fruition, and no evidence has been provided to us that demonstrates that K15 can be used in facades over 18 meters in any other configuration than that detailed in the current BBA certificate. I'm just pausing there. Is it correct factually, or was it correct factually, for the NHBC to say that they had not been provided with the additional test evidence which they had been asking for, which you saw in June the previous year?
I don't know if that is factually correct. You'd have to ask the NHBC.
Well, I'm asking you because you said that you knew that they were exasperated by the lack of test evidence. I wanted to put it right. I'm summarising your evidence just a moment ago. Can you think of any additional test evidence that had been generated by Kingspan and provided to the NHBC between June or August 2014 and early February 2015?
Not that I can remember. I mean, this was around the period where I was starting to get involved in meetings with them. And I think it's also around the period where Tony Millichap left the business and Adrian got more involved. Right. But as Tony was leaving and as Adrian was coming in, the one thing that I had said and we'd all agreed was we have to, the only way of moving forward with this is to do more testing.
Right. So do we take it from that you can't or don't disagree with what is being said by the NHBC in this paragraph? That
I wouldn't disagree with it, no.
No, thank you. Then it goes on. The absence of evidence from Kingspan means we will soon be faced with having to decline to accept buildings which are currently under construction and have specified the K15 product in facades above 18 meters for risk management purposes as a provider of defects liability insurance, and in many cases also as the approved inspector, unless the builders concerned can provide evidence themselves in accordance with BCA Guidance Note 18, use of combustible cladding materials on residential buildings, copy enclosed. The absence of evidence also means we now have to advise builders registering new developments with us that if they specify the K15 product for use in facades above 18 meters, they will have to provide this evidence themselves in accordance with BCA Guidance Note 18, preparing our communications. Now, do you remember what the response, the immediate response from Kingspan was to this letter?
I know that my response was, I need to go and see them. I remember telling Tony, look, I want to, I don't know if it was specifically about this letter, but I remember at the time I was going, I need to go and see them. I mean, I shared there, as you used the word exasperation, I was exasperated because I didn't understand why we were failing to provide them with information that they found useful.
If you scroll down to the page 2 of this letter, you'll see that it's signed by Ian Davis, Operations Director. And in the last paragraph, he says that he's copied it to Jean Murter in the hope that he can assist, and look forward to your earlier response. If we go to KIN 408283 next, please, we can see what the response from Kingspan was. It's a letter from Fenwick Elliott, who are solicitors, aren't they?
They are, yes.
Yeah. And it's dated the 13th of February 2015, written to Ian Davis at NHBC. We act for Kingspan Insulation Limited. We refer to the above matter, and in particular to your letter to our client dated 5th of February 2015. So just help me. Was this Kingspan's written response, first written response to Mr. Davis's letter of the 5th of February?
I don't know if this was the first response.
Can you remember whether there was any discussion between either you and Mr. Davis or anybody else at Kingspan and the NHBC before this solicitor's letter was sent to the NHBC?
I don't know, but I remember when I was preparing at the end of last year, I did see an email that I don't think I was copied on until the end, but I think this letter was drafted up between Tony Millerchap and Peter Wilson.
Was it you who decided that the response to the NHBC's letter of the 5th of February was to come from your solicitors?
No.
Do you know whose idea that was?
I think it was Peter's.
Peter
Wilson.
Did you sign off on this letter?
No, I don't think I saw it until it actually was on it, had gone. I think it had been sent. I think I was then copied on it.
Can you explain what it was that the NHBC was doing that justified this hostile reaction from Kingspan, rather than a measured response from management seeking to allay the NHBC's concerns?
No, I think they were exasperated with the lack of information that had been forthcoming, and I was desperately trying to engage with them to fully understand what that was and make sure we put it right. But
forgive me, Mr. Burnley, but threatening to sue them as your first reaction in response to a letter which had come from an exasperated counterparty was not exactly a way in which you were going to be able to engage with them and fully understand what it was and put it right, was it?
No, I don't think it particularly was, but I think following this, we did manage to get together and find some common ground.
Yes, I'm just interested in your first reaction. Can you explain why it was that Kingspan's first reaction, instead of engaging constructively with the NHBC to solve the problem, was to threaten to sue them?
I can't explain that, no.
No. But can you explain why this wasn't your idea, but somebody else's idea?
Oh, well, I can't explain it, no, but I mean, Peter Wilson was in a position where if that's how he wanted to react, then I couldn't have done much about it.
When you saw this letter and seen that Peter Wilson, it appears without your knowledge, had instructed Fenwick Elliott to send a letter before action, because that is what this is. When you saw that, what did you do?
I can't remember exactly what I did, but I know that I was very keen to get to see them because I wanted to try and resolve it face to face and, again, understand their exasperation.
Now, at this point, as you told us, you agree that they were exasperated. You agree that that's precisely the right word to use. And you can see that there had been no additional testing done between the June of 2014 and the February of 2015 to allay their concerns. Why was Kingspan continuing to sell K15 at all during this period, as opposed to suspending it pending further investigation?
Because the belief within Kingspan was it could still be used.
But the belief in the NHBC was that that might not be right. Isn't that right?
They were doubting that there was sufficient evidence.
Yes, and given that they were doubting that there was sufficient evidence, and given that you hadn't done any additional testing, what was the basis on which you could continue to market and sell K15?
Because they were willing to engage in conversations about how we could move forward. I mean, they'd signed off on buildings where it had been used. So they weren't at this point questioning anything about that. They were saying we've got an issue with a lack of evidence. So we went to see them to understand what is it you need to see moving forwards.
At this point, and I say at this point, during this period, June 14, your early days admittedly, but up to February 15, and you'd been there 7 months, did you yourself take or ask to be taken any steps independently to verify the test which supported the continuing of selling K15 into the market?
No, I didn't.
Why is that?
I think, as I said before, because I was relying on people around me who were far better technically qualified than I was to decide if the product was suitable.
Did you ask anybody the question I've just asked you?
I don't recall asking that exact question, but I'm sure conversations were taking place.
As managing director, were you not concerned to have before you the relevant technical people and ask them the direct question, look, what is the basis in testing? What is the test data which supports the continued sale of K15 in light of the NHBC's concerns?
Well, I think the people above me at a divisional level, I think, were having those conversations, and they were confident that the product was suitable for purpose.
Did anybody tell you, do you remember, that not to worry about this because there was test evidence which supported the continued sale of K15?
Well, I don't think they used those exact words, but I was made to believe that it was fit for purpose, yes.
You were made to believe that it was fit for purpose. Who made you believe that?
Well, I don't know. I can't remember people, but in either things I read or meetings that I was in, people were talking about, well, it can be used, and so it is fit for purpose. I was more concerned about trying to provide evidence to the NHBC about what they wanted to move forwards.
Yes, I understand that, but until that evidence had been provided by Kingspan to the NHBC, what did you have in your hands which justified the continued sale of K15 on high-rise buildings above 18 metres?
Well, we were relying on BS 841 test results.
Which ones?
The ones that were outlined in the ones we were using and referred to in the routes to compliance document that was issued later in 2015.
It was issued later in 2015.
Well, it was, wasn't it? I think it was June, July, was it?
August 2015.
August, okay.
Did anybody tell you between June 14 and February 15 that the tests that had been done up to that stage supported the continued sale of K15? Did anybody actually tell you that?
I'm sure they must have done.
Who was it?
Well, I don't recall. I mean, I'm sure that I was certainly given the reason to believe that was the case. But I don't remember being called to a meeting where somebody was going to explain to me exactly the reasons and the rationale behind it. It was accepted that was the way.
Just a question or two before the break. If you go to page 2 in this letter, you can see that, I'm so sorry, this is the Fenwick Elliott letter of the 13th of February 2015. Now, on that page, you can see that Fenwick Elliott say, as regards the specific points made in your letter, we make the following points in relation to the use of K15 boards. Then if you look at paragraph 1, first of all, our client's statement that the K15 product has been successfully tested to BS 8414/2002 and can meet the criteria within BR 135, which makes it acceptable for use above 18 metres, remains true and accurate. In support of this, our client relies upon fire tests undertaken. By way of example, we refer you to BRE test reports number 220876 and PN 297099. Now, take it from me, Mr. Burnley, that those are the 2 reports which Kingspan eventually withdrew in October 2020 after you left Kingspan. Do you accept on that footing that the assertion by your solicitors in this letter that the K15 product had been successfully tested to BS 8414/2002 and can meet the criteria within BR 135, which makes it acceptable for use above 18 metres, was not true and not accurate?
I think they're making an assertion that based on test results that they could make that statement, but I think we subsequently now, I mean, I think they were removed after I'd left, but clearly that is not what they think now. But at the time when I would read that, I would assume that, given that I wasn't of a technical level to decide, I read that and believe that to be the truth.
Are you able to tell us who it was who instructed Fenwick Elliott to make that statement?
I'm not, no.
If you look at paragraph 2, Mr. Chairman, I'm about 3 questions or 4 questions away from the end of this line. If you look at paragraph 2 of your letter on page 2 here, it says cladding systems comprise a number of different components. Such cladding systems as a whole are tested and assessed against the acceptance criteria of BR 135, not their individual components. As we understand the position, your concern is that a cladding system which includes, among numerous other components, Kingspan's K15 boards has failed a fire test. With respect, that patently does not mean that K15's boards as a whole, whether 1 taken individually or 2 as part of any other cladding systems, are unsuitable. And to make that leap and suggest that it does is plainly not a fair, sensible or appropriate conclusion to draw from the test undertaken. Indeed, it is a very surprising one. Now, it was a complete travesty of NHBC's own position, wasn't it?
Can you explain why you think it was a travesty?
Well, let me put it differently. NHBC were not saying, were they, that because K15 had failed a test, K15 was unsuitable. What they were saying was that they couldn't bless any system using K15 which differed from the system as tested in 2005.
I think the point that was made here in paragraph 2 is a point that Kingspan have maintained consistently, which is you should test the system as a whole and not individual components.
Well, and the point that Fenwick Elliott are attributing to NHBC is not, in fact, the point that NHBC was making, was it?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure of the reference to where they say the Kingspan's K15 boards has failed a fire test.
It's in the middle of paragraph 2 of the second.
I can see it, but what are they? So
exactly. Well, you made the point. It's not actually an allegation that NHBC have made. NHBC were complaining simply that they couldn't bless any system using K15 which differed from the system as tested in 2005.
I'm sorry, I didn't. What was the question there?
I'll put it one more time. What Fenwick Elliott are doing in complaining that NHBC was saying that K15 shouldn't be used because it had failed was not the point that NHBC was making. The point that NHBC was making was that they themselves, NHBC, could not sanction, could not bless a system which incorporated K15 in a configuration or with components that differed from the system tested in 2005.
Okay, well, so I've read it differently. I think the point that they were trying to make was you can't single out K15, it is the system that has failed, and therefore to specifically single out the Kingspan K15 product for the system that had failed was not correct.
And some people might see this letter as evidence that Kingspan had, through its solicitors, attributed to the NHBC a groundless argument that NHBC weren't in fact making in order that Kingspan could then use it to concoct a basis for litigation. Would you agree with that?
No, I think the general purpose of this letter was to try and encourage them to get together, which, as I've said all along, was what I was trying to do, to sit down around a table and find out how we move it forwards.
And it's right, isn't it, that in fact, that you never told, Kingspan never told the NHBC that the 2005 test was done on a version of K15 that wasn't being sold in the market in 2015?
I don't think at this stage we had told them. I don't know at what stage we did.
Do you remember yourself ever telling them, or anybody else at Kingspan ever telling them that?
I don't recall.
Mr. Chairman, is that a convenient moment?
Yes, I think it is. We'll have a break now for lunch, Mr. Burnley. We'll come back again at 2:05, please. And again, please remember not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it over the break. And we'll see you at 2:05.
Yep, I understand.
Thank you very much.